Back for another edition of In the Huddle. Carl Dukes put him up along with my man Jason Canfora, Brian Boldinger, part of this podcast as well. Guys, we are past the Super Bowl and now it is into the offseason and it's going to be interesting. And we've got all the info and all the things you want right here on In the Huddle. Make sure you subscribe, like us, tell your friends, and watch us on In the Huddle Pod on YouTube. Jason, this draft, as they all are, it seems like now, are about these quarterbacks. So I want to start there and spend a little time on your thoughts about some of these guys and not necessarily where we think they're going to end up, because we'll get to that and we'll have plenty of time to discuss. But let's just talk about these guys a little bit and start with the guy at the top that everybody thinks is going to be the number one draft pick. I am not sold yet, Jason, that he will be the number one overall pick. I still think there's things teams want to figure out. If the Bears are completely sold on that and want to draft Caleb Williams, so be it. But I also think that, we all feel like we get into these drafts, and last year's a perfect example. Everybody's got all the answers. It's Bryce Young, and then the better player is C.J. Stroud. So, at least right now. So, I don't know if they're sold on him. But let's talk about Caleb Williams. Does it concern you that his last season wasn't as productive as the season before in which he won a Heisman? The numbers were down about 20%. The team wasn't as good. Does that concern you about Caleb Williams?
Well, it's not ideal. How much of it was his control? How much wasn't? How much? Can we hold him to sort of bear about a program that just isn't, what it used to be, what it was when we were young, what it was under Pete Carroll. It's not that. What are the university's priorities? Where is that? As college sports is going in a bold new horizon, and it looks like we're getting to be the haves and the have-nots more than ever before, and the talk of even more super conferences and this or that. What are the priorities for USC, and how much does being a football superpower matter to them right now? I think that's all open for debate. I do think he'll be the first overall pick. I think that the Bears are pretty. I think a lot of curveballs would have to be thrown at them to get them off that path. I think the league pretty much looks at them as a team that's going to take Caleb Williams. Doesn't mean they wouldn't trade him, but boy, that's going to be a really it's going to be real painful for you to get them to move off of that pick. And I think it's probably a whole lot closer to where the Bengals ended up getting on Joe Burrow than some of these other recent years where, a team has been sort of given so much fodder that they can't say no. My questions about him, I try to talk to some people who are more at the forefront of the sort of analytics movement and who are a little bit more progressive, maybe in their front office leanings. But then also I've got a lot of buddies I talk to who've been scouting forever, who do have a lot of that sort of old school in them. And there's certain things that just doesn't rub them right. And I think there's extremes in everything. And so you kind of try to blend different views of a prospect off of different guys, and then maybe come up with your own middle ground. I do think just sort of leadership and handling your emotions and how much this football means to you versus other things, that stuff's going to come up for Caleb Williams. And I don't think these are major hurdles. And I think, his representation to get with him and come up with sort of a plan for his messaging, that'll make a lot of this stuff go away. But I do think it would be naive, to not think it's going to come up. And really, he can nip this in the bud by standing up there in Indianapolis in a couple of weeks. And before anybody even asks any questions of him, just say, hey, look, I want to be real upfront about what matters to me, about who I am, and about some of my missteps and why I made them. and where I'm coming from, and just direct it head on. You know what I mean? Like the commercials and all this stuff. Well, here's why I did it. You know, I did it because this program's in a weird spot. You know, and I wanted to help try to put it back on the map and raise awareness. And I wanted to bring more money into the program and NIL, and I want to share that with my guy. You know what I mean? Hey, why was I in the stands crying with my mom? Well, here's what was going through my mind in that moment, and here's what I've learned from it, and here's why I wouldn't do it again. You know, why didn't I talk to the media towards the end of the season? Again, like you can be upfront with some mea culpas. You can disarm a lot of people, you know, and you could also do this in your interviews, right? As you're meeting with teams at the combine.
Correct.
Like, I think an approach like that, with several agents who aren't going to be representing him, pointed out to me when I kind of sized this up at the Washington Post about 6-7 weeks ago. You know, they're like a little bit of media coaching, a little bit of introspection, and pretty soon all we're doing is talking about his arm talent, you know, and his on-field wizardry, and you know, a quarterbacking career that goes back to middle school. That's pretty excellent. Now, whether he'll take that, you know, what tack that he'll take and what tone this will take, I don't know. But I think in the grand scheme of things, Carl, I'm using air quotes here, his transgressions are pretty mild, are fairly meaningless. And if he weren't to go first overall, I don't think it would be because of any of that. It would just be because there's a couple of other kids who also check a ton of boxes, and you just might fall in love with one of the other ones for your scheme, for what you're trying to do over him. But the idea that Caleb Williams is going to fall or anything like that, I just don't buy. And I think we're going to see quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3. And I think 4 are going to go in the top 10 or so. And I think 6 could go in the first round. I'm looking at a lot of mock drafts, and it's almost like Michael Penix didn't play. Like none of this happened. And I understand there's some injury concerns, but I haven't seen this cat in a mock draft yet. I'm like, okay.
It's true. Especially in the first 15 picks. You're right.
I don't see him go. I mean, I've probably looked at 20 of them. I don't even know that I get him mentioned. Like, it could be, you know, like in the little paragraph where it's not Penix, but it's like, hey, if Penix does okay in his physical, you know, maybe he goes. I don't know, man. You get him in the second half of the first round. Does he really need to have 3 contracts for it to be worthwhile?
No. I think that's value. That's value.
So, and then Bo Nix is another one who I think might get in there as well. So, no, I think it's a really good class. And again, now's the part where the more I hear, the more I just go back to one of these notebooks I have with my notes on these kids. You know what I mean? From like the end of the college football season.
Yeah.
When it was really just about the tape, right? When it was just about who had done what and who had put themselves ahead of the other one based on their ability to be leaders and winners and to play the position, because we're about to get into silly season. So I try to be mindful the closer we get to the draft, sometimes going back to, all right, what was I hearing about these kids in November before, you know, this team was disgruntled about this, but this team was trying to hope he'd fall to here, you know, before all the BS started.
I think that's important. You know, I do, because we all get caught up in all of the chaos that happens, and we forget, plain and simple, as I like to say, can they play? It's one of my phrases. If he can play, Caleb Williams can flat out play. We know this. To your point, if you want to hold against him all of these small transgressions, if they're even that, I think it's just about maturity. The crazy thing,
yes,
Jake, is, you know, he's one of the older dudes. He's 22 already. Most of these guys are 20, 21, 20 years old in a month. Like, a lot of these guys are 2 years literally younger than he is, and he's still dealing with maturity. But these are all still young guys. These are kids. So I'll say this to your point about Caleb Williams. And the reason why I keep saying I don't know if he goes number 1, and this could be absolutely crazy. I think Marvin Harrison is the best player in this draft right now, period. I think he's the best player in this draft. Now, is there a team that's crazy enough, and especially at the top of this draft, to be an idiot enough to take a wide receiver, regardless of his value over a quarterback? The answer is no. But I do think he's the best player. Let's talk about Drake Maye real quick, because here's a kid with a big arm out of North Carolina. Here's the difference between Maye and Caleb Williams. Maye 6'4", 230. Caleb is 6'1", 215. Now, if that matters to you and you feel like guys get beat up in the NFL and size is a big deal, and we talk about it with all these other guys, we're still talking about it with Bryce Young, then maybe Drake Maye is your guy, because 6'4", 230 is an NFL frame for a quarterback, and he's got a monster arm. Does he turn it over? Yeah, but he can make all the throws, and he's interesting, and he's the number 2 guy on most boards right now, Jason, when you talk about these quarterbacks.
Yeah, and like he's a kid who's done that, done things the right way. There's great character, everything I've heard, great family. This is a kid who was taught in high school by Josh McCown. So he's been coached at a high level from a long time NFL quarterback, really since he's in about 8th grade. Yeah. He's got positive role models. I think the kid, again, is somebody who your whole franchise can get really excited about. I wonder how much so Bill Belichick's finally out of the Patriots building, but like, how many guys who are there were kind of shaped by Bill Belichick and who have learned to look at football through like a Belichickian prism, right? I mean, including obviously the head coach who played for him and then, became a coach under him, including some of the people who are still in that front office. Boy, like doesn't that feel like a Patriots quarterback?
It does.
6'4", you know what I mean?
It does.
Big, strapping, big arm, drop back and chuck it. Not to say that all the quarterbacks they collected over the years didn't have some diversity and some different skill sets, and certainly they were, they had their Tebow fetish, but like they usually want a guy who can push the ball downfield, like even when they dabbled with a Jacoby Brissett, right? I mean, he pushed the ball down the field. So I have a hard time thinking. Like, I could see Washington doing Daniels at 2. I know there's people in that building who feel like Daniels has the most, even more upside than Caleb Williams, if you put it all together.
Yeah.
And if those two go 1-2, I just don't think New England can get real cute here or, try to trade down and get the Michigan kid a little later. I don't know that that's how, you're trying to replace. Well, no one's going to replace Tom Brady, but you're trying to start filling those shoes. And the Mac Jones things went so horribly wrong that I don't think you can get real cute here. So I just think there's not a whole lot to overthink here. All those teams need quarterbacks badly. I think these guys fit in. You could come up with a bunch of different orders where they fit, but I think the idea of one of them taking something other than a quarterback, or the idea of
that's how people
somebody trading up into the top 3 to take Harrison. I mean, it could happen. I just wonder, how open for business do the Cardinals become, and where are they? And do they realize how far away they still are? And are they willing, to move off of that and start collecting picks? Or do they look at somebody like Harrison and just say he's so, he could be such a difference maker?
Yeah.
From day one, immediately, that we need to go grab the best non-quarterback in this draft.
It's interesting you say that, because like you talked about with Penix, for the most part, like maybe not even a top 15 pick, certainly Bo Nix, late first round if he goes there, or maybe early second. McCarthy is certainly a second round pick. I think if you take him any higher than that, that's a reach. So what do you think?
I
About
think McCarthy's going real hot, man.
Do you really?
I think McCarthy's the fourth quarterback, and I don't have the draft
Over,
order right in front of me right
over,
now, but I
over.
think he goes in the top 10.
Okay.
I think 5 of these guys are going in the first round. Like I would set my over under at 5.5. I think there's definitely room for a 5th one, and then we'll see about a 6th one. I wonder if the depth of the tackle position, like if somebody's looking there late first round and they're like, look, there's a tackle that they just love, and they really like one of these quarterbacks too, but they let the age or the injury history with the Penix kind of talk them out of it. But yeah, the football evaluators have. I mean, I've just had too many people telling me 2 months ago that, like, this is before Michigan won the national title.
Right.
Hey, that people understand why Harbaugh's running the ball, and he's doing what he has to do to try to manage games. But that kid is legit. That kid's going in the first round, and he's probably QB4. So I'm gonna stick with that, because he did go on to win some big games and make some big throws. I get it. Like, and these people would even say, like, it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you. Like, yeah, you probably watch them play Maryland at College Park and take the ball out of this kid's hands against Maryland. But, like, trust me, he's going in the first. He's going high. Okay.
It's going to be interesting. It's in the Huddle, guys. Subscribe, like us, tell your friends as we talk about these quarterbacks. We're just basically 2 months away from the draft. And it's time to start looking at this. The combine starts next Tuesday. We're recording this on a Tuesday, but next Tuesday, the combine starts. So we'll be getting more information all next week about a lot of these guys. Now, I don't know if any of these guys, Caleb Williams, Drake Maye, any of these quarterbacks per se, if they're going to throw at the combine, but we'll find out and we'll see what it's going to look like. As we're talking about the draft, I just want to ask you about one other guy. We've been talking about this real quick. We've been talking about this guy. Bo Nix is interesting to me, and that's what I was trying to get in there before. You were saying that you believe there'll be 5 and J.J. McCarthy will be in there. He's played more college football than anybody. I know that it doesn't mean a whole lot because, again, it means he's played a lot and he's got a lot of experience. I'm just not sold on Bo Nix. Maybe it's a personal bias. I saw him at Auburn, right? Watched him closely there. It didn't work, and then he goes to Oregon, and he looks like a different quarterback. I mean, he just did, and he was great. But I don't know if all these games, I keep hearing he's the most experienced quarterback in this draft. I don't care. Like, that doesn't translate to me in the National Football League. Why am I not sold on Bo Nix? And are you?
Well, I mean, I think it's obvious. Like, if he's that special, why did he bounce around? You know what I mean? Why was he a football nomad? Why did he never really fulfill his manifest destiny until the end? I have questions as well. I think we're going to have to just get our heads around how this brand new, bold new college football landscape.
Yes.
What does it mean and what doesn't it mean? Like, there used to be like, oh, he's a transfer. You know what I mean? It was like
negative.
Yeah, it was like a red, like the A for adultery. It was like the T for transfer. It's like, what happened? What did he do? You know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of assumptions that came with that. Like, why didn't it work out at the first place? What, he must have jacked something up. And I just think we're going to have to get used to the fact that the system is incentivized in some ways for them to bounce around.
It is.
And not everybody's going to make it in the NFL. It doesn't mean that they don't think they're going to make it, but there's some financial based decisions that they're making as basically glorified teenagers that maybe we need to not get caught up in. Maybe this is just going to be,
what it is,
more the norm. Like, like this Rattler's like another one, right? Like, I mean, my goodness, I feel like feel like he played in every remaining conference that we still have. And we don't have that many conferences left anymore. But, if he comes out of it and you're looking at the evaluation and you're looking at the importance of the position and you feel like he's grown from it, he's already had a little bit of more of the pro experience where you might have a different coordinator every year. Your coach might be fired after your first year. Maybe that steals them a little bit, hardens them, or makes them used to it. I guess the reality is a lot of them are going to bounce around even at the real high end. So I don't know how much you let that affect you. Like I remember talking to one evaluator about him, and he's like, look, man, I don't know exactly what happened in Auburn and why it didn't work out. And you could spend a whole lot of time trying to get to the bottom of that, I guess, if you want. He's like, or you could go out to Oregon and watch him practice and stand next to him. You know what I mean? And watch the arm and watch him process and watch how people react to him. He's like, yeah, go to their practice. He looks like a first rounder to me. Like I don't know that I'm going to get to the bottom of it. And with some of these kids, what's the point? Because the movement, it's just different. They're getting these different opportunities put in front of them, and it's a lot for them to navigate. But there's guys like, I'd take him in the first round. He's like, I think somebody's going to take him in the first round. There's again, he checks a lot of boxes. And who knows? I mean, like, how many first round? I mean, I don't know. 10 years from now, somebody probably do a study. How many NFL first round picks have changed schools? You know what I mean? Before they got drafted. I don't. It might be 70%. I don't know. Like, I don't know where this thing's going. It's already changed rapidly in 5 years. Some of them, especially the quarterbacks, that they might decide, I'll dabble with this, I'll dabble with that. I don't know.
Jason, I want to get into franchise tag here because the franchise tag date is March 5th, I believe. So we're a couple of weeks away, and there's some teams that have to make some decisions. Let me ask you about these 4 guys and whether you'd franchise tag any of them. Chiefs Chris Jones, linebacker Josh Allen, T. Higgins, who, by the way, if they do franchise tag him, the tag number is $20 million. And what about Brian Burns with the Carolina Panthers? Those 4 names are 4 guys we'll be talking about. I know that the Chiefs picked up Chris Jones, their option to franchise tag him if they need be. But do you franchise tag any of these guys, or do you just see where it goes with the contract? Because really, if you're not understanding, and maybe, we don't assume that you guys do, it just allows the team a longer negotiating period, basically, to get a deal done. And then if not, you still have the right to own the player as far as, going into next season, but you're paying at a higher rate. The top 5, the average of the top 5 highest paid guys at his position. So for Chris Jones, he's going to be making more than Aaron Donald, right? If you franchise tag him.
Well, I think because of his past contracts and cap numbers and whatever, I think it'd be pretty prohibitive to tag him. There's no doubt in my mind that getting Chris Jones signed is priority number 1 for the Chiefs. I would be surprised if he's not back in Kansas City.
Me too.
When you factor in the age, the fact that can he go out and win you a playoff game?
Yes.
Yeah, he had a lot to do with them winning the Super Bowl. But if you're a team that needs 16, 15, 17 A-plus games or A games out of Chris Jones to get to the playoffs, it's the likelihood you're getting there. Like, the kind of team that would overpay to get Chris Jones is not going to get the best out of Chris Jones because they're probably going to have to play him too much, rely on him too much. And I think Kansas City, if we want to talk about needs, they need to have a deeper bench. They'd have a deeper D-line rotation, right? And so that they can keep him on a little bit more of a pitch count. Like, I think you saw last year, like, Father Time is undefeated. And, like, if you're going to try to play him 17 games plus 4 or 5 in the playoffs, like, there's going to be some C minus games in there. Like that's just the reality of where he is in his career. So I don't know if the juice is going to be worth the squeeze for somebody else. Like if we're talking about a Jacksonville or somebody trying to put themselves over the top, sure. But how many of those teams can go out and pay 10% more or 15% more or 20% more than the Chiefs, right? Whatever you're going to have to beat the Chiefs by. How many truly elite teams are going to do that? Probably not many, you know. I think he's back there. And I have no reason when I look at Andy Reid and Brett Veach and what they've done, and you look at their history with him, and you look at what Mahomes was willing to do contractually, only taking $60 million in the first 3 years of that contract, in large part to facilitate a Chris Jones mega deal. I think that one gets done. You know, Jacksonville, Josh Allen, like they better not let him walk. They need to find somebody to bookend him. They need to find some complementary pieces around him in that front seven. That to me is a no-brainer. You know, T. Higgins, again, it's not my money, so it's easy for me to spend, but these franchises are worth billions of dollars.
Yeah.
You know, and they've had really bad luck with Joe Burrow the last couple of years. I mean, we say it every year in like July and August, right? We're doing this pod, and we're like, well, this is the year we think Joe Burrow has a regular training camp, and then they don't, you know what I mean? It doesn't take them until October 15th to start revving it up, and then something happens. But like, if you're Mike Brown, you're thinking, well, when I signed Burrow the way I signed Burrow, I was probably thinking we had at least 2 more bites at the apple, right? With my big three, with Higgins and Chase and Burrow. Like, I thought we were going to have multiple rides together, and it's turned out that hasn't really happened. So for $20 million, do you keep that together? I think you do. I think you do.
T. Higgins would be a number
one to two,
right? He'd be a number 1 on any other team.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know that he's going to look between him and Chase. Only one of them are getting the mega deal there. But the question would, you know, can you get something done with Chase where he's taken less than the first 2 years? Like, the guarantee's still monster, and he's going to get all his money. But, you know, you try to get him to a spot where you've got long-term security with him at your price the first couple of years while you're still carrying Higgins, knowing that this is the last hurrah for Higgins. Now, Higgins isn't going to love that, because why do I want $20 million when I can go get $100-something million out there on the open market? So you're going to have to massage some things. But I do think there's something to be said for trying to have one more run with those guys together. I think it certainly makes some sense. And I also wonder, too, if the expanded playoff, to some degree, if there ends up being a little bit of a correlation between more teams being willing to use the tag and the expanded playoff. Like, the door is a little more open for some teams. You can talk yourself into it a little bit more. You can talk your owner a little bit more. Well, hey, you know, what's a home playoff game worth to us? What does that put in your pocket? Because we think this guy, you know what I mean, has a chance for us to do that, or maybe more than one. You know, we win our division with this person, and maybe we get another playoff game on top of that. I do wonder if that leads to a few more teams being willing to, in essence, squat on these guys, right, and pay a price to keep them off the market, in essence, to suppress their earning potential, to try to help your team win in the real time in that next year. It's a 1-year proposition. I wonder if we see it used a little more because of that. Maybe.
As we finish up, guys, last week, the Kansas City Chiefs celebrated another Super Bowl victory with the parade. This is the first time that Jason and I, or for that matter, Baldy, who's not with us right now, but he'll be with us later in the week and later, next week, to talk about this. And I just want to address it because this is where football and society intersect with the Chiefs victory parade that killed 1 and injured 24. What we now know, all right, and Jason, I know you were on the air last week, and I was as well when this was all going down, and we were kind of like, wait a minute, what? Because we were talking about the Chiefs and how jealous we were about the fact that they're celebrating another parade, and then this happened. And we now know that this was not a terrorist or anything like that. This was a dispute between a couple of young folks. Two of the three suspects are juveniles, and gunfire broke out. So they wounded 22. 9 were kids. And, it just makes us, again, think about where we are, Jason, in our society where football fans, right, are trying to enjoy the fruits of what the Chiefs have been able to achieve, an incredible feat. It's a dynasty. You got a million folks out there enjoying this. And this happened after the parade. Again, for those who are not familiar with this story, I don't know where you've been, but this wasn't during the parade or anything like that. But the fact that it just happened and that you had kids shot and injured and one dead at a victory parade. So, Jason, we know this. I'll share this real quick, and then I want to get your thoughts. 2012, my daughter was in second grade, and Sandy Hook happened. And I remember coming home and being so distraught, thinking about 6 and 7-year-old kids being killed in a classroom. And talking to my wife about it, we were just, as every parent is, and you're a parent, and I know you're just nervous all the damn time because you can't trust that you're sending your kids somewhere that they're safe and that they are going to be taken care of. And more importantly, that they're going to come back home to you, which is what every parent wants. So I remember that vividly and talking about it and saying, oh, this has got to stop. This is insanity. And Jason, here we are in 2024, brother, still talking about this shit, still dealing with it. And I feel for Chiefs fans who went out there just to enjoy and to have your kid injured where you should be in a safe space. So listen, I've said this time and time again, I don't have the answers. I don't know, because we know that we live in America and we do have a right to bear arms. But at the end of the day, this was a couple of knuckleheads that just started shooting after an incident, and you kill one and you hurt multiple children. And so we're lucky that more didn't die, but this is kind of where we are, man. And it doesn't matter if it's at a victory parade, classroom, movies, and so we're just saying, I'm saying we have to address this, America. I mean, this is not going anywhere. And we keep thoughts and prayers is bullshit. It just is. Every time it happens, that's all I hear, Jason. So I just wanted to express that in talking about this because we have not on this podcast had a chance to discuss it.
Well, I mean, look, it's the American nightmare. It's the American disease. It's the American way. We are almost calloused and jaundiced to it at this point. Anywhere, any place, anytime, any reason. Like church, parking lot, synagogue,
that's right,
school, college, gas station, the unfettered firearms marketplace, and the fact that so many states have almost no pushback. It's it's harder to get a driver's license. It's I mean, don't even get me started. And we as a society don't care. We don't care. The politicians certainly don't care. There was a time in this country where we had stronger gun laws, and we especially laws limiting access to certain types of weapons. And just go look at any of the numbers and go look at the types of incidents we're talking about where, it's 10 or more people wounded or killed at the same time. It just wasn't happening as much. And so we've tried it this other way a long time. Like we're decades in to, repealing all of that and trying it this laissez-faire way. We could talk about who it's working for, right? It's working for the NRA. It's working for gun manufacturers. It's working for these politicians, these ghouls, these feckless cowards, these subhumans who continue to have their pockets lined by blood money, and they're okay with that. It's working for them. I'm sure it's working for like our enemies, right? And countries out there who want to see America fail. Like, it's working for them. It's working for Putin. It's making this country appear to be a lawless third world country every single week, probably every single day, in various communities that don't have a whole lot in common other than senseless gun violence is everywhere. So, I mean, I don't think anything will ever change. I can't give anybody any credit. Like, I have a hard time thinking that there's a better day. If you said it, if the legacy of Sandy Hook is a decade later, we basically get over these things before they even happen. That there's so many happening in a day that some of them don't even get coverage because they're not as outlandish as it happening at a football parade. Because this wasn't the only act of this nature. Wasn't the only time in our country where multiple people were slaughtered on the street that day. Then the legacy is, I guess the bad guys won. Big ammunition won. The NRA won. These politicians won. And I don't think anything's ever going to change. I don't know what it would take now to surprise me about anybody going anywhere at any time, almost anywhere in this country, except for certain political rallies where they actually check everybody, right? Except for, where it's not going to happen? It's not going to happen at the next NRA National Convention, because you can't bring all the laws they fight for, all the unfettered access, open carry your glorified AK-57 wherever you go. You know where you can't do that? You can't do that in Charleston Heston's backyard. So, I mean, it's disgusting. It's sickening.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's ever changing.
We want you to subscribe, like us, tell your friends. It's in the Huddle, guys. And where football intersects with society and real life happens, we talk about it. But this is a football podcast, and we stick to our lane, and we stay in our lane for the most part. But we had to talk about it and at least address it. Jason, I totally agree with you. Everything you said. My man, we will talk again as we get the countdown to not only franchise tag day, but also the combine next week. We're going to be getting into all of that, talking about all the guys and breaking down position by position, getting you ready for the upcoming draft, which is the biggest thing in the NFL. Of course, free agency happens before that, and I'm curious to see, what happens there and who makes a jump and who changes teams and what teams are willing to spend. The Washington Commanders, guys, have a lot of money. They could change the complexity of their franchise with making some franchise moves as far as free agency and having a great draft. That thing could get right pretty quickly. So it's going to be an offseason, a great offseason for a lot of teams, but we'll see how it shakes out. And we're here to talk about it with you. So make sure you subscribe. Jason, have a great day, man. And we'll talk. All right, guys, take care. Thanks for being here.